Welcome to the Utility Security Podcast, your command center for all things utility security. From power plant warriors to grid guardians and even curious citizens, this podcast is your essential briefing on keeping up to date with knowledge and insights for securing our nation's utilities. Expert intel through interviews with security chiefs, tech wizards, and policy shapers. Tune in as we explore the latest vulnerabilities, industry best practices, and inspiring stories of resilience from the frontline heroes keeping our grids secure.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody, and welcome Jerry Burhans. Can you tell our listeners more about yourself and your experience in the security industry?
Absolutely. So I'm an industry veteran with channel facilitation. I'm currently the managing director of ALCEA ABLOY for North America. Been as I said, in the industry for many years, and I've been focused on facilitating a manufacturer's goods through the channel. So that's what I do, and I do it pretty well. I understand how to, listen to the customers, listen to the manufacturer, listen to the entire team, and, get the products that are needed for a successful implementation of the sale of goods and projects. And I've grown several companies, had a couple sold over the years to big conglomerates, but very excited to be with ASSA ABLOY. I've been with ASSA ABLOY the past 7 years, a couple of different divisions, and I've been with ALCEA here for the last 5 years.
Quite an extensive list of experience there. We're so happy to have your expertise and background here on our podcast. So you're with ALCEA. Can you tell us and our listeners more about how ALCEA fits into the ASSA ABLOY ecosystem and how the collaboration internally works for ASSA ABLOY companies?
Absolutely. So ALCEA is a global division. We fall in the global solutions division of ASSA ABLOY. Saying that we're global, we have over 20 offices globally. So our office for North America is based in Irving, Texas, and we've got offices around the world. We do business in over 90 countries, and we really listen to that critical infrastructure space on a global level for ASSA ABLOY. So when customers or organizations within critical infrastructure around the world are looking for things that ASSA ABLOY offers, we're that point, business area for ASSA ABLOY. So, we work within ASSA ABLOY internally and externally, external collaborations, internal collaborations, things of that nature. Most of us were born out of the ABLOY division, the high security division. A lot of us worked in that area until the ALCEA ASSA ABLOY division was born and branded back in March of 2024.
Okay. So now I wanted to shift the conversation and talk a little bit about utility security. As you know, utilities are facing new and evolving threats ranging from theft and vandalism all the way to drone attacks and attacks from extremist groups. From your perspective and the ALCEA perspective, can you talk about where you all are working to align your solutions to the new needs and the existing needs, and where you're seeing some of the biggest pain points from utility security professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the question. It's very, very important to listen to the utility customers and other critical infrastructure customers out there. And what we do is that, we rub shoulders with these people. We go out, we visit, our teams visit, we have meetings, whether it's a teams meeting in person, trade shows, etc. And we listen. And we've proven ourselves to be trusted advisors for this area, for critical infrastructure, especially in the utility business. We have some huge projects with very large utilities around this, very fine planet that we all live on. But when you look at, the utility customer or the utility organization, they're facing, as you mentioned, new challenges every day. Things that you would never think of. It's almost like, you're watching a James Bond movie or something like that sometimes when you're talking to these people. But, usually we don't have, everything right off the shelf, stocked in our office, in the warehouse. But that's where we have to listen, and we have to really, go about getting things, from the entire group or things that we already have, put together. But, making sure that we're listening to this type of customer, which is a totally different breed of customers within the security industry, than your standard business, selling a video camera or an access control reader or, something like that. They have very sophisticated things. And then also most of their infrastructure is dated. And some of these, customers rely on government regulations, government money, passage of, rates, within the utility. I mean, if you live in a state, you can't just, charge a gazillion dollars for, a gigawatt of, energy. You have to, fall, within the guidelines that the state or, what have you, requires of you.
From your perspective, what kind of technologies are out there that you're seeing utilities use more of or looking for more of? And where is that technology space going? Is it evolving into new places?
Yeah. So, a couple of those items that you mentioned, that's that infrastructure protection, within the utility space, that challenge of having a widespread operation. You think of a utility, it's not like you just go to one building, and that's the utility. You might go there to pay your bill back in the old days, let's say, but now you're doing it online. But, these places are spread out, especially in, states like, Texas or any state. I mean, it's depending on the utility, what their coverage is. I mean, it's a huge area. How do you protect, the area leading up to the official utility area? Well, a lot of that is what we do within ASSA ABLOY and outside of ASSA ABLOY, internal collaborations, is that the utility's got to collaborate. I've been in a couple of meetings and listening to, authorities, within the utility space, the security leaders, and they talk about, collaborating with the police force or, the local government, the FBI, to, see list or, see the areas, things that are suspicious before they get to the utility. And then when you look at the utilities infrastructure, having things that are out there on the edge, whether it's, cameras, different types of access control for the fence or roads, to gain access into these roads leading up to, say, substations or what have you in these widespread areas, it's a pretty big collaboration. So, I don't think, ASSA ABLOY, we happily enjoy, having a lot of cool technology from all over the planet. We're able to put things together, and then we're also able to work with a lot of external collaborators. But, I don't think there's one manufacturer that has everything. Especially when you get into these multiple technologies, like, drones and some of the cool stuff from video cameras where they're, using that LiDAR to really detect things before they get up close, to keep people from shooting at, substations and things like that and knocking them out. But, that leads into vandalism and criminal terrorist threats, So again, having the utility or other critical infrastructure organizations being able to collaborate with, the authorities to understand, hey, what's happening in the area? Or, we just saw where we read, some Facebook posts or some sort of Twitter thing or who knows, or X, I should say, social media that you've got stuff, organizing maybe in your area. You should watch out for that, so these are really, challenging times for these utilities, and we're out there listening to them. So, we may not have the product, or maybe we do have a product for them, and then they may want our product to work with some of these other types of things. So we're very open to that. We're open to, breaking down the barriers of disparity software within the industry. And that's probably one of the major issues from the security space, historically, is being this siloed industry, having, all kinds of different software. So, when you get into operational resilience and trying to keep from having interruptions and maintenance of these things, you can imagine if you're a utility, you got all different types of structures and buildings and things within the organization. Well, you're going to have different types of equipment, for all this stuff, which means you're going to have different types of software and, all these types of things. So trying to, get these things operating together as a family and, making sure that there's no service interruptions, from an industry that's been traditionally disparate, that's a challenge. And then also being able to manage the cost, with all this stuff, because usually there's a cost to all this, we're not giving stuff away, and it's a unique challenge for these utilities.
That's a great lead into my next question, as you kind of referenced earlier. Utilities are diverse in the landscape, the territory they have, and the size and scope of their operations. And that also, I think, equates to budgets and the amount of man hours they have. They can, the bigger utilities have a lot more than some of the smaller utilities to spend and utilize. So from your perspective, from the manufacturer perspective, ALCEA's perspective, what are some guidelines or recommendations or tips or ways that you have seen that can help them be more efficient and effective in their security systems and, with maybe some limited resources?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the nice thing about our division, our business area, and specifically, our market area in North America, listening to the customer, listening to those challenges. There may be a smaller organization, smaller utility that has a unique challenge. Maybe they're on some water, or they have some sort of, interesting, dynamic about their utility, but they're not, in a huge city or having, a lot of funding. We're able to get them the product through different channels. So when I mentioned at the top, my experience, of being able to understand how to facilitate a manufacturer's products through the channel, most of our team around the world understands these types of things. So we call on and, collaborate with the end user, with that utility, listen to them, and okay, do you need to define this as a direct purchase? Do you need to go through a channel partner? Do you need to have an open bid, a closed bid? All these different types of things. We're listening to them, and we're open to all those ways of getting what that utility needs and wants for their application. Sure. And breaking down those barriers, which is unique because when you think of, what I said on the previous question of disparate softwares and disparate technologies, well, there's disparate ways to buy stuff. You and I buy stuff from, most likely Amazon, or you go into a store, we go into stores less frequently today, so you're buying things online. Security products traditionally are bought in a certain way. So you have shingled, dealers or a network of channel partners throughout the United States. Let's say you're a utility and you need product X to work with maybe a product that, ALCEA has, and you want to integrate it, but they can't get it because maybe the local channel partner just doesn't want to service them or isn't, not in the critical infrastructure market. That's the thing is you've got, clients out there or channel partners that don't necessarily focus on critical infrastructure. And that's in our I stand on the Security Industry Association's Utilities Council, and that came up in our last meeting, our quarterly meeting a few weeks ago. A friend of mine, Pierre Bergeau, brought it up that, a couple of integrators are starting to look at focusing in this market because it's huge. It's important. It's important to everybody on the planet because, anything, especially utility wise, goes away or, that hot water stops or the air conditioning stops in a hot area or the heater stops in a cold area. People are, dying, uncomfortable, have problems. So you're going to see a shift of, your national accounts, certain integrators. You're going to see, a focus. And I think ALCEA, ASSA ABLOY, our BA, has really led that. People are seeing what we're doing. They're listening to us. They're understanding that this is a huge area. We estimate this at over $50 trillion worth of business, throughout the globe, just on, security spend for, these areas over the next 5 years. I mean, it's a big market.
Yeah. Yeah. Big and important. And like you mentioned, if there's outages, it's front headline news and people, can be in danger, with their lives even. I want to kind of shift to, a next question. And when I was looking at it here, it made me think of the iPhone that's in my pocket and how quickly it's going to become obsolete. So I wanted to ask you, as utility security professionals are looking to implement security solutions into their operations and organizations, what are some guidelines or tips or recommendations you would offer towards helping them sort of future-proof some of their solutions to make sure they have a longer shelf life?
Well, I mean, that's a challenge. So, first thing, in my opinion, which obviously you're asking, this question, so my opinion is important. So establishing credibility, with that, utility. So what I mean by that is, let's say, ALCEA, we have an internal collaboration partner with ABLOY. ABLOY has been in business for over 100 years, early 1900s. Really trusted manufacturer. And a meeting I had yesterday with a critical infrastructure facility, I went through that, we're not just, some new technology company offering you some bleeding edge stuff. So that's, establishing that rapport and building that credibility that at ASSA ABLOY, we have the best of the best. I mean, obviously you need to mix new technology and sometimes even, way out there, bleeding edge, where you're going up the tipping point, like, with our Bluetooth padlocks and things like that. We're starting, in that area and it's gaining some steam, but that's the $1 million question. How do you, make sure that the utility isn't going to be spending a bunch of money and then in 2-3 years having to replace that technology because it's old or it's outdated or what have you? That's magic. So we really focus. We focus on, having those credible products, credible divisions, working with credible, collaborations. Much like our partner Nina Foundry, which is an external partner for manhole covers. We take the ABLOY technology. We've implemented a collaboration with Nina Foundry, which is the market leader in manhole lids, throughout North America. And they are offering products to utilities to secure the underground, infrastructure, to make sure that either people, are not getting in there and dying, freezing to death, because they get stuck. That's happened in some cities. Or maybe, a lid explodes, so they're offering pressure release. That's a big new focused area for Nina Foundry, and we're glad to be a collaborative partner with them. So, you take a look at ASSA ABLOY, the ALCEA critical infrastructure division, the reference brand for the industry, and then collaborating with a known entity like Nina Foundry, that builds credibility with the utility that we're going to be there to support the product now, so that pre-sales, implementation stage, and then post-sales, for a long time, we're going to be here. We're not going away. And that's one of those challenges that, like drones you mentioned. I don't know which drone company is the top drone company. I don't know that. It's not my focus. I do feel that I'm a pretty, not an expert, but someone that really prides himself on understanding, new technology and paradigm shifts and things like that. But, who knows who's going to be here in 5 years? Which company will own these? I don't know. Maybe ASSA ABLOY will buy a drone company. I don't know. I'm not, that's not part of my, business, development or area at ASSA ABLOY, but, who knows,
Yeah. All right. I'm going to transition to a kind of timely question. We're talking here in the summer of 2024. And, just this last week, we're seeing, temperatures in Las Vegas reach record high, 120 degrees. Tropical storm just hit Houston, knocked the power out. Third of all Texas counties were impacted by tornadoes and severe storms. A lot of weather happening, and not to get into any sort of political arena about the why or the who or the what or whatever is causing it, but it is happening. We're seeing extreme weather, and it's impactful on utilities. So from the security side of things, what sort of concepts or solutions do you recommend utility security professionals should be considering when implementing solutions that have to withstand more extreme weather, especially those that might be spread out across different time zones and different climates?
Right. Well, you probably heard that old, adage or phrase, you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. So it's kind of, that, rule of thumb, you take a look at a critical infrastructure, project, and specifically utilities, these products that you're offering need to be battleship tested. They need to, whether have military specs or, you got to make sure you can depend on the product, so something might be cool, a new technology or whatnot, but you don't want to use that or overuse maybe a commercial product into an application that's pretty robust. Now, we were talking about ABLOY, which was, one of our great internal collaborations that we have at ALCEA. Their product is very robust. It's designed in Finland, which is a, unique climate, been around for many, many, many years. We have thousands and thousands and thousands of mechanical or electromechanical products throughout the world. And specifically in the United States, we have thousands of these devices in no matter where you go or what kind of climate or what kind of disaster you may have. And these products work all the time. We had a really cool, utility that deployed a lot of our product, and they had floods, and where I'm at right now, it's flooding like crazy because of all the remnants of Hurricane Beryl, and the river levels here are really high. And, so you got a substation or somewhere and it's near a river and it's flooding the banks. What do you do for that electronic padlock? Do you have some commercial grade item out there because it was, inexpensive or had some interesting new technology or feature? I'd be careful with that. You should probably go something that's tried and true, trusted brand, and has experience within that market. So you're applying that product in the right application, because once that river recedes, and you dig the mud off that padlock, our super weatherproof padlock, it works 100% of the time, whether it's a pretty day or, a challenged day. And that's what's really important, to make sure, talk to us, give us your application, understand, that we're going to offer you products that are for critical infrastructure. ASSA ABLOY is a big company and we have a lot of different things. We're not going to offer you things for the residential business in the critical infrastructure division because that wouldn't be, right. But, as I said earlier, utilities are unique. They have all kinds of operations. They may have a corporate headquarters and they have substations and, all different types of things. They may have fleets, obviously there's, fleet trucks that are out there. We have products for all those applications, so that's, and the right products, so that's what I would recommend, just to talk to us and let us, guide you, listen to you and guide you in the right direction. So when you face these weather events, which we all face, success happens because you don't want failure. Failure is not good. And it was unfortunate several years ago when a lot of those people died in the freeze, down in Texas. And a lot of that was because stuff just didn't work. It was frozen, so got to be careful.
All right, I'm going to wrap it up with one more question. I just would love to ask you to share a success story you've had with a utility customer where they've come in with some challenges that they were having trouble finding a solution for, where ALCEA or ASSA ABLOY were able to help solve that problem for them.
Yeah, probably one of the coolest areas that is gaining traction is that, renewable space area. You've got a whole cottage industry developing of renewable energy storage. And so you're storing energy to, use it a little bit later. So these things, and even when you look at a wind farm, the wind terminal, these types of things have interesting locking points or things, where you're using a traditional door, whether, in the wind terminal space, kind of like a Scandinavian type, door. So you need, a Scandinavian type lock. You can't just put, a U.S. Designed lock on a product that is manufactured somewhere else to be used here in the United States. So we have that ability to offer, whether it's a mechanical, electronic, smart locking product for these types of applications. When you get into the renewable energy containers, again, they have traditional doors. So we have all the different types of things, locks, access control devices that can be used to safely secure these. And we've just been communicating to that market, and they get excited and they're like, wow, we never thought about this. They may have gone to like a McMaster-Carr or somebody to kind of look for something and they couldn't really find it. So now, we're out there knocking on these people's doors saying, oh yeah, we have smart stuff or intelligent locks for your basic container or storage thing. And I'll close with this, in another critical infrastructure area, traffic enclosures, which lends into utilities. Utilities have tons of enclosures, out there. We designed a smart traffic enclosure lock, being a drop-in replacement. And this was an external collaboration and an internal collaboration of componentry to make the smart lock. And it's been really successful, and it saves the DOTs a lot of time and money, that cost control, especially when you have contractors, understanding who's going in and out of what and how long they're spending repairing things. And that's, one of those big concerns that utilities have is reducing their costs. So being able to put smart locking on things like enclosures, if you think of the power lines person, they're going out and they're working on a box, and maybe they build the utilities saying, oh, we were there for 8 hours. Well, were they? Do you have a smart lock on that little enclosure? Was Jerry there at 8 a.m., and left at 5, You don't know. So that's huge. Being able to incorporate smart locking on these edge devices, whether it's a wind terminal, a renewable energy storage, a traffic enclosure, an IT closet, what you name it, we've been able to do it, and customers are real excited, and that's why they keep coming back. We don't get replaced. That's the cool thing. I've been here for 5 years at ALCEA. I've not heard somebody call me up or email me and say, hey, you know what? We don't like your products anymore. We're going somewhere else. I think that's a true testament.
Very cool. Thank you so much for your time today, Jerry. I really appreciate it. Can you tell our listeners more about how they can connect with ALCEA?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a website, alceaglobal.com. So you go there, and we've got a contact page, depending on where you are, because hopefully people from around the world will hear this podcast, so you don't necessarily have to just be in, North American market, but go to ALCEA, global.com and pick your area, and we'll get the email and we'll follow up with you ASAP.
Great. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody today for listening, and hope you stay safe and secure out there.
Don't forget to visit our website at utilitysecurity.com for exclusive intel, resources, and a community of fellow utility security professionals. Stay safe, stay informed, and stay tuned for your next mission briefing.
The views, information, and opinions expressed during this podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Utility Business Media and its employees. It is strongly recommended that you discuss any actions or policy changes